It's Optimism Monday. NBA preseason is here. The Nuggets kick off their preseason on Monday. We'll recap training camp, talk about the scrimmage that the Nuggets held in front of the media, which Adam got to see, and we'll talk about some news and notes from around the league, including Calvin Booth and his team getting an extension finally. That's done. All that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making this your first listen every day. We're free and we are available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join the show and join all sorts of folks who are hanging out with us. Nathaniel, what a name. Marco, Snail's back in with us. What a name. Alexander, Big Honey, lots of folks hanging out with us in the chat. It's the best way for you to support the show. Just go to youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, turn on notifications, and you can join the show as we record most mornings between 9:30 and 10:30 Mountain, depending on what our mornings look like. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Adam Mares of DNVR. You can follow him on Twitter at Adam_Mares. On today's show, we're going to talk about the Nuggets preseason game tonight. We'll do that in segment 2. We'll preview that. Preview the preseason. What better way to spend a Monday?
Hey, man, are you kidding me? No, you are the worst, Matt. You are the worst. Here's the thing. Are you actually pretending that you are not interested in tonight's game? Is this what you're doing? Because yes,
we'll talk about why I'm very excited.
All right, but don't start off like that. I mean, you're doing like this is reverse psychology or something. Yes. What are you doing here? Come on.
Set the bar extremely low, my friend. I'm from Arkansas. You set the bar low and you hope to just get over it. That's the objective.
Quite the sales pitch.
And in the final segment, we'll talk about Calvin Booth and the front office's extension and the news around the league. But we'll start today as we wrap up training camp for the Denver Nuggets. A wholly positive experience for Denver here on Optimism Monday as training camp went smoothly. No injuries coming out that we know of, knock on wood. Everybody goes into the first preseason game as healthy as can be expected. Again, knock on wood. Adam, before he left San Diego, was able to catch scrimmage. And my friend, I have a number of questions for you about the scrimmage. But give me like the overarching takeaway from the 10 minutes of scrimmage that you were able to see.
Well, first of all, it was great to get to watch it. You know, it was basically they did a 4-quarter scrimmage with referees and they treated it like a game. So no stoppages, no coach pulling in to give teaching points. It was basically a live game, and we watched the entire 4th quarter of it, of which I believe Jokic played the entirety of it, Jamal the entirety of it. So like the main guys were out on the court for the entirety of that portion of scrimmage. Here are my big takeaways. Number one, Bones Highland, who I've heard all summer looks fantastic, all camp looks fantastic. He looked fantastic in this one. I talked to somebody, you know, just kind of trying to get a sense. I talked to a lot of people trying to get a sense of who stood out, who this or that. Somebody told me that they thought Bones was the second best player through camp behind Jokic, of course, that's how good he looked during camp. So the Bones hype, I think, you know, leaving the station, he did have 2 3-pointers that were from, one was about, I'll say 3 or 4 feet behind the line from the wing. So the furthest part behind the line. And then he had one that was maybe 10 feet behind the line. And the one that was 10 feet behind the line, just to set the stage, was a big shot. This was like second unit had a lead by about 5 or 6 for the whole 4th quarter. Right at a moment where it was like, all right, the first team's making a run. They have a 20 seconds of great defense. Bones gets the ball with like 4 seconds left, looks up at the clock and just says, you know what, from here, and drains it. So my first note, Bones looks fantastic.
That's good. That's interesting. His acceleration is going to be fascinating to watch with this team, right? Because Denver, one of the reasons that they traded Monte was that was easy. Like they could afford to trade Monte Morris to get an upgrade at a position they needed to guard. And, you know, Ish was a throw in part because of how much confidence they have in Bones. Bones putting pressure in terms of being so good he's hard to keep off the court, that fundamentally kind of like reshapes some of the direction that the Nuggets go in. Like that has to factor into your calculation. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues into the season, because a lot of guys have a good rookie season. It's interesting. There's this idea that like most that players are just like, well, you should be better in your second season. In my experience, it's kind of hit or miss, where I think a lot of guys that start slow, like I'm expecting good things from Jalen Suggs in Orlando this year because he was so bad in year one. Right. I'm like, okay, I know he can shoot. He should get better there. I think year two could be the, oh yeah, that's right. That's why this guy went top 5. With Bones, he had a good rookie season. And sometimes you kind of expect like, well, it could be shaky year 2. As long as he's healthy, it sounds like he's primed for a real breakout. And that's just like a fascinating story, both for Denver, for Bones. It could be really interesting. Everyone loves him.
Yeah. Well, I walked away, Matt, kind of excited about that second unit. There's still question marks, but Jeff Green, Bruce Brown, even DeAndre Jordan's a veteran. I mean, we'll see how he fits in, but really Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, to me, I look at that and I go, those are nice vets for Bones to get on the second unit to sort of help him out. Like Bruce Brown brought the ball up the court a handful of times to kind of get Bones moving off ball. Jeff Green's a really good secondary scorer where, he had a couple nice plays where he facilitated in the scrimmage. So I'm excited for that. My number 2 takeaway, just to stay with the positives here before we get to the negatives. When the Nuggets had Aaron Gordon bring the ball up the court a couple of times, mostly it's like grab the ball in transition and just go. And it makes you think, when Aaron Gordon brings the ball up off of a rebound, in years past, it's been great, but you run Michael Porter to a corner, you run Jamal Murray or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to a corner, run one guy to the opposite wing. Talk about elite spacing. And then Jokic rim running. There was just a handful of possessions where either he initiated it from a stoppage or in transition, and every single time the Nuggets got like wide open looks on it. So to me, I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Gordon is the guy that brings the ball up the court a handful of times, not because they want him initiating and do it too much, but just to make the first entry pass because it bends the defense so much.
That'll be, I think, an interesting, based off of my recollection and experience watching it. I think that's probably one that could be really beneficial in the regular season, right? Teams that do their scouting work and actually care about these type of things will be like, oh, let's pressure Gordon on the handle, and that's usually a good way to slow up the offense. Go ahead.
I mean, like if Denver was guarding him, it'd be Michael Porter guarding him. Like, do you want Michael Porter? This is the thing is Denver has enough weapons that it's probably going to be your 4th or 5th best defender guarding him.
That's a great point. Yeah, you really can't pressure him with a guard because then you're going to have an absolute mismatch on the other end. That's a good point.
So it was just a little note. To the negatives though, Matt, the one thing I will say, Michael Porter hit some impressive shots. I mean, his shot making is great, and he had this one sequence where he hits 2 threes in a row, and Yoke on the next play goes right to him. Like, hey, come over here. Let's just hand off and shoot it. You're on fire. Let's just see if you're still on fire. But the thing that stood out to me is his defense. And look, it's his timing. Him and Murray both, you expect them to be the timing part of this to take some time. But his timing defensively was really bad in this one. There was 4 or 5 plays in a 10-minute sequence that we watched, 4 or 5 plays that were like, they scored because of a breakdown that started there. And it was just one of the things that stood out to me, especially in such a close game. When the other team gets wide open dunks and layups, you go, man, that's not a good sign. So his defense, I think, is going to be one of those things where we should expect a season-long work in progress.
What was the reaction of teammates and coaches?
So the one, I mean, I don't want to play body language doctor too much on that. This is a scrimmage. Guys were, I think, mad because they lost, like understandably so. The one play where I thought there was interesting body language though, Matt, somebody hits him. I think it's KCP hits Michael Porter for a cross-court pass. Michael Porter, open. It's Zeke Naji on him. Shoot it. Just shoot it. He's open. He has a 3. Nobody can contest him. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. Instead, he attacks the basket and gets a charge. And what was especially bad at that is if you stop the tape, there are 4 defenders in the paint when he drives. Jamal Murray is wide open on the opposite wing. He misses them, and the ball kind of bounces. He gets blocked and takes a charge, just to show you how much of a traffic he goes into. He charges on one guy, Christian Brown, and gets blocked by another guy in DeAndre Jordan. So he double missed the defensive read. But the ball bounces to Jamal Murray, who's wide open on the corner, and Murray like slams the ball hard. You could just tell he's like, bro, either shoot it or read the court. I'm wide open over here. This would have been a great play. So again, to me, that's probably We've seen Porter have missed these types of reads in the past, but to me, it's compounded by the fact that he just hasn't played at this speed for a long time. I was encouraged by the fact that he was driving to the basket almost recklessly. I mean, he had 2 plays where he got a charge, one he should have. So I'm kind of encouraged that he's like in the headspace where he doesn't care if he collides with people. But at the same time, he collided because he made a bad read.
I think it's something he's got to work on, right? Like it was one of the concerns we had of him, is one of the kind of the tipping, like probably we should have been tipped off that he was hurt, was like he was really hesitant driving last year. And so, right. I think that's going to have to be, I think, in order for this team to reach its maximum potential, he has to be able to not just shoot, but drive to apply pressure and open things up. Hey, Optimism Monday, nowhere to go but up. Just a scrimmage, nothing to be worried about.
No, but first of all, there was good things in the scrimmage. I saw some people be like, it's bad that the first team lost or whatever. First of all, they've played a bunch. I've heard there have been days where the first team couldn't be bothered. They just dominate as well. Secondly, part of the reason that the second team won is because Bones absolutely caught fire in this game and just would not miss. And it's like, hey, he's also the Nuggets. So you could be bummed that the first unit lost, but you should be excited that the second unit has that much sort of explosive firepower.
To me, it's always like a reminder of basketball can just be random.
Yes, of course.
There's just a certain amount of randomness that, and it really does go to show you like how good most NBA players are. Can I ask how DeAndre looked?
Nothing remarkable about him. I didn't think he didn't stand out in a positive or negative way.
What did the second unit look like in terms of running offense? Was it pick and roll with Bones? Was it?
I mean, it was really Bones heavy.
Yeah.
There were possessions where he kind of dribbled it 12 times, but it worked. I mean, he was spread out, pick and roll. I'll say DeAndre played about half of it. Zeke played about half of it. It gave for different looks. But Bones, I thought, did a very good job of picking when to sort of keep the ball in his hands and when to draw the defense away and then let somebody else sort of exploit the advantage he created.
It sounds like Zeke's been playing quite a bit of 5, which I'm excited about.
He was really good in the portion we watched as well. Mainly nothing flashy, but just being in the right spots and then finishing through contact a couple times.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll preview tonight's preseason game versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll talk about what we're excited to see from that, concerns that we might have in terms of what you want to watch out for, like, not losing to the Adelaide 36ers, that obviously being a nice thing to try and keep your eye on, as well as later in the show, we'll talk about Calvin Booth's extension and more as we continue on Locked On Nuggets. But right now, I've got to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can create a job post on LinkedIn Jobs extremely easily. You just go in. The entire process is guided. You get to add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame, and you get to work on all of the kind of things that are going to be able to break down exactly what you want. The screening questions that make it easy to find candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys joining us on a Monday, on Optimism Monday, before the Nuggets get started with their preseason on Monday night. Make sure to check out the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview starting October 10th. It's a 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NBA season. The local team experts and the NBA insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey all combining into one ultimate NBA preview. Starting October 10th, search for Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. I'll be on there we're in the revenge section. That's the segment that Nick Engstad has put us into. Adam, is the Nuggets are in the revenge section. So I don't know what the Nuggets are getting revenge for, but
can we before we move on to previewing tonight, can I just give a couple quick overarching things I take away from camp?
No, I'm running the show. It's my podcast now. You don't get to. No, go ahead.
A couple. I mean, some of this is stuff we talked about. I do think this team is really veteran, and I think that we're going to notice that and talk about that a lot throughout the course of the season. Just the different positives that pop up that we haven't seen before. As I mentioned, Bones looking good. This that. I think Christian Brown's going to play a lot this year, and part of that is just because any injury, he's one of those guys that you could plug in to a lot of different spots, the 2, the 3. Even if you're down, somewhere else, you could slide other guys up or down a spot. So I think he's going to play. Also, I just have heard he looks really good. And even watching him in there, he's just such a plug and play type low usage player. He's like the B version of KCP at this point. So I think he's going to play a lot of minutes. And I wouldn't even be surprised if some point in the middle portion of the season, he leaps Davon Reed in that role, meaning just as sort of the default guy that goes in there. He provides more defense than Davon Reed. He probably provides the same amount of scoring or offense, and he knows his role very, very well. So that's one of my big takeaways, not just from obviously what I watched, but also just from kind of getting a sense of who looks good. His name came up a lot.
So he's just like a level above, essentially. Like he's just.
I mean, again, one of the nice things is I don't know that it means a difference in wins if you went from Davon to Christian Brown. Like I don't think that I'm not trying to say they make such an impact that it's going to make a difference in that way. But Christian Brown, to me, one of the things that excites me about this Nuggets roster is Bruce Brown, I think, is a legitimately great defender, especially in ways that Denver needs. I think KCP is a very good defender. And I think Christian Brown is another good defender. And none of those guys project to be negatives on offense. They all have offensive weaknesses and shortcomings, but none of them are like, they're not like, who was the guy they had a couple years back on the G League team, in the bubble? They put him out there for defense. He had like a 7-foot wingspan. How am I blanking on his name? He's not like one of these guys that's like, hey, he's so a Roberson type guy where it's like he has nothing on it. They all have something on offense.
So there are people in the media room, right, who are like this is all they do, right, is cover basketball and the Nuggets specifically. And there's folks that are they cover a lot of sports, and so like their attention is divided, and that's okay. Bruce Brown is absolutely going to be the guy that a lot of people are like, hey, you know who's really good? Like that's going to be the guy that there's good. And I think that's going to be the same with the fans too, where I don't know that a lot of fans, I think a lot of fans are like, we signed some guy named Bruce Brown. Right. And if they're not like NBA obsessives, they're not going to know. And then I really do think there's going to be a lot of like, that Bruce Brown guy's really good. Like he's really good.
Right. Yeah. Bruce Brown, I think is, his defense on Jamal in the scrimmage part I watched, he only guarded him for a few possessions, but they were like elite defense. And I was just like, man, this guy, and then you see some of the advanced numbers about how he navigates screens and how he plays pick and roll as a defender. I just think he's going to be a very valuable piece. Shaq Harrison, by the way, is the guy I was thinking. Like Christian Brown is not Shaq Harrison, where he's just a zero on offense. He can shoot. He knows where to be. And then he has a lot of athleticism, and then defense, and then he always stays in his lane. Like he's going to be one of those guys where I think it's going to be very rare for us this season to say, what was he doing there? We'll always know, like, okay, he's in his spots.
Is Bruce Brown the second most Atom player on the team behind Jokic?
Bruce Brown? Probably. He might be. I mean, I like weird, unique guys. He's pretty weird and unique. We'll see. But I don't know. Unique. Yeah. Other guys like Bones is just too exciting, man. Murray too exciting. So those guys, even though they're not Atom players, they leap up to that zone because they're so exciting. MPJ.
Sure. All right. So tonight the Nuggets take on the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are considerable favorites. If you're betting preseason, do not bet preseason. I bet preseason. Don't do it. Don't do it under any circumstances. They are considerable favorites tonight at home versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Thunder, obviously, without Chet Holmgren and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, should be this Thunder team should be a lot of guys that I'm like, I didn't know that person existed. Just in terms of who they'll play tonight, they'll probably go pretty deep on the bench as most teams do. Can I say this? I'm torn. I understand the importance of Jamal getting a game experience and settling the nerves and going through it and being able to come out of it and seeing how his body responds and being able to be like, okay, like got through it. Is there any part of you that is like me where it's like, it's kind of a bummer that the first time he'll take the court won't be opening night? or at least the home, like, and even then, like, it should be like the home opener, right? Like, it should be like.
Oh, you're saying like tonight ruins it for you because he's playing?
It doesn't ruin it. That's too far. It just takes a little bit of it off of it. The first regular season night that he's introduced is still going to be chills. Like, there will be chills.
That's the thing, man. It's preseason. Like, this is like, I watched him. Here's what I will say, Matt. Getting to watch him in the scrimmage the other day, I kind of felt lucky. I was like, it's been so long. I do think that the absence of Jamal Murray has made him grow closer in the hearts of Denver Nuggets fans, just because he's such a good player, and not being able to watch him for so long has been a bummer. And tonight, to get him to watch him on the court, I don't expect anything big from him. I'll bet the starters play 2 stints, in basically the first half. But just a chance to kind of get out there again and be reminded of what it looks like. And not just him, but that whole starting unit. I'm so confident in the pieces of that first unit that to get to see them together for the first time since the injury, to me, it'll be really exciting, and it'll only be more exciting to see him in the regular season.
Enjoy the little high moments tonight is what I would recommend you as a fan. Like, there will be little moments where you're like, that was awesome. Like, really enjoy that. It's your first kind of taste. It's the appetizer. It's not even the appetizer. It's like the bread on the table, but you're starving. You just got in the restaurant. You get some bread with some olive oil. Have some of that. Take a drink of wine. Enjoy it. And don't take it too seriously. I'll say this. The only time I get worried about preseason is if you go winless. That's the only time that I get worried about preseason. I don't care about the outcomes. I was having this Suns fans were predictably in their feelings last night after they lost the Adelaide.
That does matter. Here's the thing. You're right that you shouldn't read too much into preseason. Yeah. You need to put it in a box.
Read nothing.
But you shouldn't read nothing. And if a team loses like they did after the week that they had, like, to me, I'm like, yeah, that's something. It doesn't mean they're going to lose opening night of the regular season. It doesn't mean any of that. But it does mean that, hey, man, vibes really are low there.
You want to know what's funny? I actually take more from you'll be surprised at this because you're always ragging on me on how cynical I am and jaded. I actually take more away from preseason than I used to. I found, especially because I've sifted so much of the betting stuff over at Action, I really got to get a sense for the vibe of the teams and the momentum that they're headed in. I think preseason is a great indicator. You can catch, like, if you watch a preseason game, you will be able to tell which teams are like, okay, we're here, let's do the job, and which teams are like, this is fun, man. Like, I like this group. This is like, I'm glad to be here.
Like, had the Celtics not gone through turmoil, like the Warriors might be like, hey, we're here, we got to get through this, because they just won a championship. They understand. Yeah. But there is something to Phoenix, not just that they lost, but the starters lost their minutes. Like, for them to go out there and have that, you just look at it and go, okay, this team might be a little down. The psychology is so important. Let me say this, Matt. After the scrimmage, Bones was asked, like, why did the second unit win? And he said something like, well, I just caught fire. Like, very almost like, arrogant. But the thing is, to be at this level, I've learned it. These guys have to have an irrational amount of confidence. To pull up from 35 feet in a close scrimmage like that, or a close game, you have to have a ridiculous amount of confidence to do that. So the opposite is true. In a team like Phoenix, if you kind of lose that, like, do I really buy us as contenders this year? Is this group a little stale? It manifests itself in a lot of ways that diminishes your talent.
Yeah, the best way I can kind of put the thing with the Suns and the 36ers last night is, look, it's not a bad sign as long as they write it. But if things go badly, you absolutely look back and go, hey, remember when they lost to the 36ers in their opening game? Like, in their opening preseason game after the bad training camp? Like, yeah. So, like I said, vibes are really important. And that's a very, it's such a non-concrete thing, right? And it seems so interpretable and very much prone to confirmation bias. Again, if the Suns win their next game, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm not worried about them anymore. Like, they should be okay. But if they go winless, then I'll be like, And I'm the same way with the Nuggets, where if the Nuggets go winless in preseason, I'm going to be a little bit like, that's not a good sign. It's not a death knell. It just is bad, right? It's just another in a long line of things. The player I'm most interested to see tonight is one, Christian Brown. I want to see what he looks like in game action. And then
he should get a lot of minutes tonight, I imagine, because I think that third unit will probably play. My guess is the first unit and second unit play the first half, and the second unit and third unit play the second half. That would be my guess.
Are you going to the game tonight, or are you going to the bar?
I'll be at the studio. I think I'm going to go to the arena though for the the warm up and stuff, just to kind of be around. And then I'll
I
be at
miss
the
you
bar.
being at games, so I can give you the side eye. I miss
I'll
that
I'll
experience.
mix in some game that we have a plan this year. We'll be mixing who goes to the games a lot
Oh,
more.
good.
I mean, you have to understand. Last year there wasn't the access that there was this year. It was kind of
Sure.
like not, it wasn't as valuable. This year it'll be more valuable.
Yeah. It's too bad because now I'm just gonna have to I'm gonna have to give Ryan Blackburn the side eye every time that Ish Smith makes a floater. I'm just gonna be like,
He'll play a lot tonight.
excited to see Ish Smith.
Ish Smith stonk report up, like his stonk report from training camp is definitely way up. And part of that is he seems so comfortable to not play. I don't think it's going to bother him at all.
That's what's great about having Smith is like, hey, all of our guards are hurt. We need you to play 25 to 30 minutes tonight. No problem. Hey, tonight's probably there's not gonna be any minutes. No big deal. Like, just glad to be here. I work for a living. That's Ish Smith. Look, it's not that I'm not excited to see Bones. It's like I'm not excited to see Bones because I don't have any. I don't know how the ceiling is so high, right? It's like, man, is Bones going to go for 35? Like, is he going to hit 2, 3-pointers from 40 feet? Anything is possible with Bones Highland. That's what I think is the most exciting thing about him, is that you can give me any result and I'm not going to be like, no way. There's there's not an outcome, a positive outcome that I'm going to be like, no way. Right. That's how. And once I started to think about him in those terms, instead of like I weigh so many guys and based off of their median, essentially, once I started to think about that, I realized how important he is to Denver, is having high ceiling guys. Like, honestly, that was one of the big problems with last year. Was the reason I kept coming back to the idea that they weren't that bad was because I was judging them based off of their median performance and not factoring in that no one had a high ceiling except for Joker and Aaron. Like, they just didn't have high ceiling guys. This team has so many high ceiling guys night by night.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. I think this is going to be a very fun first game. I would love for the Nuggets to come out and look like world beaters, but either way, just to kind of get Jamal on the court and kind of feel that energy, it should be pretty cool.
Can we get Bones versus Poku on a switch?
We're going to see a lot of Bones, man. I think we're going to see a good amount of Bones tonight.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the extension for Calvin Booth and the rest of the front office. We'll talk about that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I've got to tell you about BetOnline as I slowly and surely pull up the BetOnline overlay. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Lost on the Broncos yesterday. That's a bummer. I
bet you were so bummed.
I trusted them. And I thought it was a great spot for them versus the winless Raiders. But, everyone talked about how the Raiders probably should have been like 2-1 or 1-2. It was a tough one. A lot of things didn't go their way, but they're back at it. Good spot this week, Thursday night versus the Colts. I initially bet on the Colts and then bet out of that because the Colts are banged up. Jonathan Taylor's out. So that run defense that may or may not have gotten gashed.
Nobody ever give us a 5-star review for Matt's trolling. Give us a 5-star review. Just don't credit Matt's thing. None of it is earnest.
I'm trying to be supportive of the local team, and I'm talking about the betting angle here. Broncos are actually 4-point favorites versus the Colts on Thursday Night Football. I have bet out of that position. I think it's going to be a stay away. Might bet the under, though. I bet that Broncos defense fights back. After all the stats say that Broncos defense is excellent. So yesterday was probably an aberration when they gave up 200 rushing yards to the Raiders. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check all of your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. And you can bet NBA preseason if you're a sicko like me. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for making this part of your day and your first listen every single day. Make sure that your second listen is Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Josh Lloyd hosts the number one daily fantasy basketball show on the planet. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. My good friend Rob in Loveland, who's the father of my son's best friend, is always listening to Josh and talks to me constantly about how much good information he gets from Josh Lloyd. I get a little jealous, not going to lie. I get a little jealous of how good Josh Lloyd is at his job. So make sure to check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball, wherever you get podcasts. All right. So on Sunday, I think it was yesterday, Sunday, the Nuggets officially announced the extension, first reported by Mike Singer of the Denver Post, that the Nuggets have agreed to a contract extension with Calvin Booth. Singer reported that it is through the 24-25 season and has extended the entire Nuggets front office structure. So Tommy gets extended, all of the analytics guys, the assistant GMs, everybody's extended. This is the deal that they had talked about way back when Calvin took over in the summer, and we were having questions about, why hasn't this gotten done yet? Because you kind of made it sound like it was going to be any day, but they've gotten it straightened out. It is locked in. And look, it's been a preseason. It's been an offseason, a single offseason, but this was unquestionably the right move for multiple levels. It provides stability for the front office, and that reassures the players. They don't want to be in a chaotic environment. Calvin, I think, has proven that he's the guy in terms of the way that he has not just like taken over and been like, okay, we're just going to kind of keep things, and there's like a slow attrition, but instead actively looking to improve the front office structure and the mechanisms and those type of things.
That part,
yeah. Being aggressive in free agency and trades, like they upgraded the team. They did not go into this season with the same roster and being like, you know what, we're good enough. We just had to get healthy. They got better at key spots.
All right, here's the thing. I wouldn't call it that he upgraded the roster.
Really?
Because I think any GM would have tried to upgrade the roster. It's the specific way in which he did. He brought in defensive guys. I mean, every move he made was to add defensive. It's not just that he's upgrading, it's that he's moving it in a direction that we haven't seen before in a meaningful way. And it's one that I'm telling you, Michael Malone loves. Like he brings it up all the time about, we brought in a lot of guys this year. Like this year we went with defensive guys. And to me, that's as much as anything is Calvin. Well, actually it's twofold. One, it's the roster has an identity it's never had before, and that is on purpose. And that is also has Calvin's fingerprints all over it. And then the second part I think you were about to get to, which is that the structure of the front office, I think, is meaningfully different.
Yeah, I think it's an important point with upgrading this way with the defense. I'll also say this. Malone's got to chill out now. Got the extension. Gave him the veteran players. He's got defenders.
Veterans too. I should make note of that. It's not just that they added defenders. It's that they brought in veteran defenders.
There's more pressure than ever on Malone, but he's gotten what he wanted. Right? Like, you can't sit here and go, you cannot say the Nuggets have not provided Michael Malone with what he needs to contend for a title.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that doesn't mean he can win it. The West is really good. The NBA is really good.
Well, Matt, it is noteworthy, isn't it, that Malone didn't have his annual training camp? Usually there's one day that was just not up to snuff. One day where Malone comes to the presser and kind of lays down the law. None of those this year. Malone in great spirits every single day of training camp today. Happy with the training camp every single day.
Tell me about the front office from your perspective in terms of what the significant structural changes are that you think are impactful.
Well, first of all, they just added a lot more people. I mean, it looks like the front office has more compartmentalized of like, hey, I think one of the MOs of Tim Connelly, and by the way, I don't know that any of this is right or wrong. I mean, Tim Connelly obviously drafted very well and so fewer scouts, more scouts, everybody does a little bit of everything versus people have more specific roles. I don't know what's best. We know a lot of organizations that have 100 people in the front office and they make terrible decisions. So sometimes more is not always better, but I do see Calvin sort of assembling new people, just because his network is different than Tim Connelly's network. So they're going to be both different people and different types of people, but also just something a little bit more, I think, compartmentalized where it's like, hey, this is going to be our group that really emphasizes on this. This group emphasizes on this. And then these are our decision makers, that kind of deal with all of that information. But I'm very excited. I had a chance over the weekend to sit down and really get to know Chad Iskey for one, but also Drew Nicholas, who's going to be the director of scouting, a new director of scouting. He was a star in Europe. He has been in a front office now, or a couple different front offices for a couple years now, and now is bringing that to Denver. He knows Calvin from, I believe, Minnesota. And I'm just excited for him and to kind of see, and talking to him, I'm excited to see what kind of stamp he puts on the scouting department for Denver. And I'm told, because he's such a legend in Europe, that he really helps Denver open up new doors in Europe. So Denver already had like good access out there through Rafael Juk. I think Drew Nicholas is going to add even more to what Denver can do in that regard.
I wanted to kind of circle back to the preseason game, just because we're getting a lot of comments in here. What are your expectations? I know that they're going to be low, but what are your expectations for Peyton Watson tonight? He's probably going to play.
He's going to play, I think. I think he'll play a lot in the second half. If I were to guess, I'd bet he plays 15 minutes tonight in two different stints, like 7 and 8. Expectations, I expect him to look pretty bad on offense, and I expect him to look good on defense. Here's the thing I will say I'm looking for him. I thought in the summer league that his motor wasn't what it needs to be for him to be like an all-defensive player, which is for him to make it in the NBA, he needs to be an all-defensive caliber player. That's his bread and butter. I didn't think his motor looked like that. And I've heard that his motor looked very good in training camp and that he's kind of like picking up the speed and the intensity he's going to have to play with. That'd probably be the number one thing I'm looking at is he just making things happen because of his effort level?
Yeah, I think there are players, I think that again, I'll just say this. Peyton comes in with so much connection to legitimate stars, right? Like KD is listed as a mentor. He worked out with Russell Westbrook. Like he has been working out with the top level of the NBA, and you can talk about Russ. However, this has been going on for a couple of years. And I kind of have a little bit of a concern that that's like where he envisions himself. And I'm like, man, you are like a ways, right? Like the league is really determined. The biggest thing is just like everybody's so good in the NBA. Like everybody's so good in the NBA. And it really is like, this is why Team USA is often listed as this really formative experience for guys, because they see how hard the other guys work. Like seeing how the best ones work, like their approach to the offseason stuff. And it's one reason why, like, look, I come on this show and I do the writing and I go on Twitter and I do all these criticisms and this is bad and that's bad and this thing. Right. These guys are amazing. Like it is incredible how much work goes into being great. And like, I don't ever want to lose that. I can be jaded about the business side of it and the effort and all these other things. But I will say, like, the amount of work that goes into the best players in the world to be as good as they have to be when they're competing at this level with each other is insane.
Stephen Wynn says, hopefully Peyton sees how hard Jokic works. I think this is something. I think this is honestly something. Look, I had heard that Bones' work ethic coming into the season last year, it wasn't that it was bad for the level that he played. It's just that he did not realize what it took to be how that effort level goes up when you get into the NBA and you become a professional, and that he sort of learned throughout the course of the year. And then this summer attacked it with a pros level of intensity. And I think that's part of why he's leveling up this year. I imagine the same is for Peyton Watson. Like these guys all have to learn. And I do think when you look at the 2-time MVP and you go, wow, that's how this guy approaches it. If I want to legitimately call myself a player with potential, I need to approach it the same way. So I do think there's something to that. I'll give you one quick anecdote, Matt, that I found interesting from talking. I won't put either of the people in the story on blast, but there was a player on the Nuggets, a veteran player, and there was a front office member, and he's telling him, the player asks, who are some of the rookies we brought in? Like, tell me about him. And he's telling him about him. And one guy, they say Peyton Watson. He's like, I don't know him. I've never heard of him. And the front office member pulls up a picture, and the player, the veteran, goes, oh, that guy? That guy's good. I've played against him a bunch in California. I didn't know who he was, but that guy's really good. So, again, there is something about Peyton Watson where he has the respect of like all these veterans around the league. I haven't personally seen a whole lot of it, but I haven't seen him play that much outside of Summer League. But at least it's one of those things where like veteran players seem impressed and see it in him.
Is he a real hooper?
He might be a real hooper.
Might be a real hooper. All right. Let's get wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets for Monday. We'll be back tomorrow with a recap of the Nuggets' first preseason game versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Give us those 5-star reviews. I have been on my best behavior and believe that I deserve your appreciation. And look, if not for me, then do it for Adam. Give us those 5-star reviews. Let's pump it up. Go to youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets and turn on subscribe and the notification button. You can join the show and talk to us live. We'll be back tomorrow. Hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you again tomorrow.